So good morning, everybody. Good morning to all of you, our viewers. We have the privilege to have today's talk on the Chinese aggression. We have seen a lot of things happening in India-China border, and we wanted to understand the issue in the depth. So we have veteran wing commander Honorable Jaydev Desai, who has served Indian Air Force for the last 22 years. He is the person who single-handedly set up the Mirage 2000 repair line for the Indian Air Force. He also translated the book on 1970 Indo-Pakistan War. He is a noted strategist. He has published many articles on Indian defense and participated in numerous Gujarati TV talk shows. So it's a great morning. A warm welcome to Wing Commander Jaydev Desai to have him. So viewer, let us begin. Without spending time on the formalities, I would pass the baton on to Wing Commander Jaydev Desai to educate us, to enlighten us on what is happening, why China is so aggressive uh, these days when the entire world is suffering with the COVID-19, the pandemic, which has its origin in the China only. At Indology Foundation, we have a long history of getting associated with India's defense. I myself, working as a digital architect, I provided solution to Indian Air Force, particularly its communication system that Air Force was using since 2009-10 was implemented by me and my team. And then we have also exceptional privilege to make a presentation to PMO on the after the request of Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi to how to tackle Pakistan and Pakistan-sponsored terrorism in Kashmir. So we are the people who gave the first idea to our Indian government during that presentation to do a very quick, intense strike on the against the Pakistan and settle the balance in India's favor. So, in the same legacy, continuing with the same legacy, today we are sitting here together to study Chinese mind, what China thinks, why it is so aggressive, what are its plans, and how the world is responding to Chinese aggression. We don't see much of we don't see much response coming from the European countries. So there must be some reasons. Only America and the Australia to some extent are responding, and those countries, neighboring countries, suffering from the Chinese aggression, like Japan and some of the Asian countries, and then the India responding to Chinese aggression. So why this cold response to Chinese aggression? It's misadventure and kind of terrorizing the world peace scenario. China is becoming a threat to the world peace. So now, passing the baton to Honorable Guest Speaker, Veteran Wing Commander Jaydev Desai, who would address all these answers, who would let us know why China behaves like this and what are its strategies, its war doctrine, uh, it's a tactical preparedness, how it is going to respond to India's army's defense, its preparedness, everything. So, warm welcome to Wing Commander Jaydev Desai. Please start, sir.
As an expert in the subject. I basically consider myself as just a student and try to understand the topic or subject from whatever information is available and I gather from various sources. So first of all, good morning to all the viewers and very happy morning to all of you. I would first like to thank the Indology Foundation for providing me the platform to speak on the subject. Especially, I would like to thank Air Commodore Basin sir, who is my senior in Air Force, and for whom I always had admiration for his professionalism. He, the person who suggested my name to Mr. Lalit, and of course, I thank Mr. Lalit for having accepted this and that is why here I am with you in front of you. Actually, initially, the topic suggested to me was Air Force, their comparison of Arsenal, and so on. But then, after discussion with Mr. Lalit, what we felt that let us not limit the discussion only to Air Force and try to give the 360 degree view to the viewers. And that is why we enlarged the topic and we put the topic as New Age conflicts, strategic review of current situation due to Chinese aggression. And for that, I'm thankful to Mr. Lalit. But here I would like to put a very big caveat. That enlarged topic is so big that it will not be possible to go into detail of each and every aspect of it. Many of the topics which I will touch can be all covered in a one full lecture series like this. And if given time and approval from the foundation, we can discuss those topics separately on some other time. So let us start the presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide. My talk today, I shall broadly break down in three main parts. That is, I will try to understand reasons of this adventure by China at this very time. And that I would like to break it down in four different topics. That is, some historical facts we will discuss, Chinese policies, relationship with other countries, mainly the Western countries, European countries, and then we will talk about the Indian policies also. That will give us a slightly holistic view to understand why the China has gone for this adventure in Ladakh. Then we would compare the Air Force arsenal of both the countries. And then at the end, in my opinion, I would dare to stick out my neck and discuss what can happen in future. And at the end, I would conclude. Next slide, please. About China and its recent policies. The Indian problem with China is quite well known to all of us. But it was not like this always. China and India were the largest economy till about 17th century. Both China and India combinedly, we control more than 50% of the GDP of the world. Our relationship started some 2000 years back. Fa Hin was the to India from China in around 480, that is about 2400 years back. Thereafter, regular exchange of culture, ideas, and trade continued between the two countries. Buddhism and its effect on Chinese culture and thinking is well known to you all. And you'll be surprised to know that in 3rd century and thereafter, many Hindu temples came up in China, in Guangzhou and other areas. For trade and other communication, Southern Silk Route, as it was known at that time, was established between the two countries some 2000 years back. China, therefore, feels that it was a superpower, a powerhouse of centuries ago, and it deserves and wants to regain this glorious position once again in future. Next slide, please. China has followed the expansionist policy for long. China has eaten up territories and countries as part of theirs, like Inner Mongolia, Tibet, Manchuria, East Turkestan, and so on. Earlier map of China and the present map of China are there in front of you in the slide. As recent as in July, they also claim Vladivostok of Russian city as part of China. Thus, the expansionist policy of China is well known to the whole world. And we are also the sufferer of this policy of China. Next slide, please. They also flex their muscles in South China Sea. And it has occupied many small islands and also have created many artificial islands. Through them, they started te- te- they claim marine territories of many countries as theirs. Parcel Island occupation in 1924, Spratly Islands, and so on. Taiwan and Hong Kong problem is well known to all of us. China lost case of maritime boundary claim in the international court against Philippines, but they have refused to accept this verdict, and they have continued to follow the bullying tactics with Philippines and other adjoining countries in that South China Sea. Next slide. Next slide, please. After the death of Mao Zedong in 1976, Deng Xiaoping initiated drastic changes and encouraged commercial international trade. Nixon helped China in bringing them in the center of commercially. With US support, China prospered. USA saw China as a big market. But China put the condition that the companies must manufacture products in China. That helped USA companies to expand and take advantage of huge Chinese market. China grew at more than 9% and gained economical strength. Their GDP quadrupled in 15 years. With this growth, they started building their own industrial, R&D, and military capabilities, and also initiated many projects for indigenous development, manufacturing of military hardware, and so on. This started way back in mid-90s. As they grew in confidence, they dreamed to become a superpower and aim to replace USA as number one power in the world by 2030. Belt and Road Initiative, that is called BRI, or in other words, One Belt, One Road, or OBOR, is well known, thought out, intelligently planned, and executive strategy of China to increase its influence and control over beneficiary countries. In this, they create international standard infrastructure in willing countries. The initiative has both land and maritime routes, as shown in the slide. Total funds made available for this initiative is about 1 trillion US dollar. This infrastructure is built with the money given to them as loan. The loan terms are required to be private and not to be publicized by the other countries. The interest rates is kept generally high in a way that most of the cases beneficial country will not be able to pay it back. The loan is extended against some strategic assets of the country, like infrastructure, like a port and so on, some mineral mines, political capital, etc., etc. In all of this, political patronage is ensured, and China assures access to the political influencing capabilities so as their interests could be furthered. Also, contract to build this infrastructure is generally given to the companies from China, and thus they assure their money is plowed back into China. About 60 countries so far have become part of the BRIs. 13 are from Europe. Russia also is part of it. And almost all of our neighbors have also become part of this. India is not encouraging, not join this, and not encouraging other countries to get into this trap. Actually, BRI, if you look at it, is a new methodology to colonize the countries. Colonization of the country using economic muscle is the name of the game. This also provides to the territory and rights of their use by China, mainly Chinese armed forces, that is Army and Navy. Next slide, please. China relations with Western countries. Like Mr. Lalit mentioned, that the Chinese relation with Western countries, especially in Europe, needs to be studied. As we discussed, China started their economic reform from 1976, supported by. After the disintegration of USSR, the world became became unipolar and USA could flex their muscle unilaterally. Decision to go to war with Iraq without UN approval made European countries to sit back and think, and they decided to support China so as to create multipolar world. China's entry in WTO and eagerness of European countries to extend trade and commerce with China suited China the most. China gave that access to their market in terms of access to high-end technology and high-end products of European countries and companies. In return, Europe kept their eyes closed on IPR infringement, human rights violation, and so on. China also increased their FDI flow into these countries, and most beneficial countries were Germany, UK, France, Italy, and so on. Italy went one step forward and also joined the PRI. Story of Australia also is something similar. And Australian political system was generally captured by China. And after the instigation of this new dispensation, new government, which is a nationalist government, the inquiry started about the China influence in political system. And in this inquiry, a lot of raids were conducted, and many political as well as the high and arrested. So the Australian policy and thinking regarding China is changing. But as far as European countries remains, they have not come out in open against the China till now so much. Next slide. Against this, let us have a look at the Indian policies and their actions. Relationship between India and China started worsening from 1950 onwards. Our soft policy over trusting the neighbor are the main reasons of what happened in past. Till about 2014, we didn't even build infrastructure for armed forces to take supply and manpower to the borders, though China continued sending their infrastructure, making it possible for them to occupy more and more land of ours. Our armed forces were also not provided basic necessity of arms and ammunition, creating capacity and capability gap. The soft policies towards attack on integrity and security of India encourage our neighbors to take advantage, and they encourage and aided the separatist group domestically housed. I feel the 1962 war was weighing very heavily in the minds of previous dispensation, and unwillingness to make India stronger to face the challenges upfront was very evident. It was stated position of previous government that not building the infrastructure near borders to aid the army movement and supply chain. That actually the way I look at it came out with the fear that in case of war, if we build the infrastructure and if we lose, then it will be very easy for China to come into the mainland. Stopping even the construction like bus stand on objection by China encouraged China and made their positions much stronger. The second, as I said, that when we talk about China, discussion on China war of 1962 is a must. Here I would like to bring out that many people, including China, tries to remind us of 1962 war during this situation. Yes, in 1962, we did lose the war and lost quite a size of our land too. Many reasons are discussed for our loss. These are political, military, and could be both, and many more. But one important reason why we lost the war, because as per my opinion, Indian Air Force was not allowed to play its laid down role of defense of the country in that 1962 war. At that time, if you analyze the air arsenal and air capability of both the countries, you will realize that China had no air force worth to be considered. Whereas India had that time comparatively superior aircraft like Tufani, Mysterious, Hunters, Nats, Canberras, and so on. Many of them were available in eastern and northern borders itself. Or rather, I would say most of them available on that border. Still, they were not used. Whereas China had MiG-15, MiG-17, IL-28, and few MiG-19 aircraft. At that time, all the available airfield in Tibet and other areas were at very high altitude. And these fighters were not capable to operate from such altitude. Other airfield were about 1,000 kilometers away, and the distance was too high for this type of aircraft to be of any importance in the war from that distance. Therefore, Indian Air Force could have had air superiority and could have changed the result of the conflict. 1967 conflict in Nathula and Chola clashes is generally not spoken about in India, but is very, very important to boost the morale of Indians as a whole. In 1967, when Nathula PLA attacked Indian post on 11 September 1967 and at Chola in October 1967. Aim was to control Chumbi Valley. In both these clashes, Indian Army not only pushed PLA back, that is Chinese army, but inflicted very heavy casualties on PLA. The last Indian trade policy with China gave uninterrupted advantage and access to China to dump their cheaper goods in India. China took full advantage of the price-sensitive market of India. The trade imbalance in favor of China increased multifold in last about 15 years, that all of us are aware of it. Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, popularly known as Quad. Another important part in this Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, also known as Quad, it is an informal strategic alliance between Japan, India, Australia, and USA. Till now, the military arm is not become the part of the dialogue, but I expect soon that also will be the part. The aim of the alliance is to ensure rule-based use of Indo-Pacific Ocean region and movement of cargo, free movement of cargo in that region. It started as a dialogue in 2007, but now it is taking formal shape by the latest meeting of foreign ministers of these four countries. China looks at this alliance as anti-China. Today, in Times of India, the comment of Pompeo and the NSA of USA is there on the first page for all of us to see. And this comment is after taking part in Quad. Next slide, please. In recent time, after the present government, next slide, please. Indian policies and attitude have gone sea change. In India, lots have changed since last 6 years. Following main changes are noticeable. I will not, previous slide, previous slide. I will not explain it since I'm sure you all have noticed them and are aware of them. Change in foreign policy, keeping India first in all the dealings. Use of trade and commerce as India market as a diplomatic tool. Strengthening of armed forces like Rafale induction in Indian Air Force, and many things have happened. Atmanirbharta in making India in defense, and lot of policy changes taken place. So Indian armed forces is much more stronger than what it was about 5 years back. Strict maintenance of laws and order so that the fault line of India cannot take much advantage of the law and order situation. Enhancing internal security by taking proactive measures against the separatist groups and J&K as well as Northeast against Naxalites and Maoists. Solving long outstanding issues like abrogation of 370, Ram Janambhoomi, and so on. Increased speed of infrastructure building up, along Indo-China borders. India also followed the policy friendship and work on improving relationship with all countries. The classic example is the friendship with Israel as well as the Islamic countries. Installation of nationalistic government in various European countries, Australia, and win of Trump in USA in 2016 help India in creating useful partnership and friendship at the highest level. Along with this, the growth story of India attracted the attention of the world. India pulling out of the RCEP, that is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, fearing dumping of goods from mainly China and other countries affecting domestic economy. That also was not liked by China. Doklam standoff in 2017 hurt ego of China and proved the world that India has intent, ability, and strength to face China. Surgical strike in Myanmar and in POK, and thereafter airstrike on Balakot, well inside the mainland of Pakistan, and then very next day, successfully defending airstrike of Pak Air Force with about 24 aircraft of theirs, and shooting down of F-16 aircraft with MiG-21 Bison, put India as a regional power in the eyes of the world. All these actions of India were not of China liking. Next slide, please. What China wants. With all this, now question can be asked, what China wants by undertaking present aggressive moves. Is it just to grab some land of few hundred kilometers, or there's something more to it? Let us try to analyze this. Let us first analyze what China did that world did not like, and what India did that China did not like. Many things we discussed till now, but additionally, we could include following points also. The first and foremost, many countries considered COVID-19 as a biological warfare by China and want to teach China a lesson. USA under Trump has taken the lead. Coronavirus softened the countries in the world. Their attention was wholly devoted to take care of the domestic needs of their own country. China saw this as a great opportunity to take care over many companies whose valuation had deteriorated because of the economical slump, and take advantage of the situation. That has upset many countries. China was unhappy with India because of many things like what we discussed, like abrogation of Article 370, making Ladakh a union territory, India going close to USA, Quad initiative, and so on. And China, when this particular situation started back in May, have indicated to India not to be friend with USA and not to go close to the USA. So that was the static so-called intent of China as far as India was concerned. Emergence of India as a regional power is not liked by China. This was in spite of aiding Pakistan and insurgents group in J&K and Northeast with the idea to keep India under check. But that did not work because of our proactive policies and various other policies what government of India have undertaken now. And this China saw as a threat to its plan to be the sole power in Asia and replace USA as number one power in the world. Its logistical need to connect Aksai Chin to CPEC from Siachen side. That required gaining advantageous position in Galwan Valley. And this is, I personally feel, is the main reason why the military action is initiated, along with other more reasons what we have discussed. Next slide, please. With this, we are now ready to discuss what could be the political aim of China for this aggression. Please understand, that no military action is initiated unless a political aim is known or finalized. The military action is basically to to achieve that political aim of any country. So we must understand, try to understand what could be the political aim of China for this aggression. As per me, and this particular political aim is generally not publicized. And as per me, and I feel China has following limited political aim for taking this action in Ladakh. Gain control of certain points in Galwan Valley, as like what we discussed, so that their plan to connect CPEC in Pakistan and Gilgit side can be implemented without any hindrance, and thus the south part of the China can be connected to CPEC for access in the to the port. That, as per me, is a limited aim of China's move. Force India to rethink being a friend to USA and taking part in initiatives like Quad and other similar initiatives. Prove the world that India is not strong enough to be permanent member of UNSC. India is trying hard to be the permanent member of UNSC. Many countries are supporting us, but not China. And this could be the attempt of China to prove the world that India is not strong enough to be the member. And thus, China wants to be the lone regional power in Asia, and then the only superpower from Asia, cutting the competition from China. So these four, I think, could be the limited political of China. Next slide. Now, I think we should be ready to compare the current Air Force arsenal of China and India. Before I speak about air arsenal of both the countries, I would like to point out that many opinion makers in TV, print media, and other talk compare the size of economy and the size of armed forces of both the countries, and then question the ability of India to counter China in military terms and also economically. To counter this, I have following points to say to this opinion maker. By putting forward these types of arguments, I feel that we have forgotten the history of the world and our own history. Let me give few examples. Lord Rama fought with mighty and very rich state of Ravana. And Lord Rama won the battle and killed Ravana. In Mahabharata, Kaurav army was much bigger, and number of Maharathis in Kaurav army were also much more than that in Pandava's army. But Pandavas won the war. British Empire was very powerful, but still we won the freedom and managed to throw them out. Mighty USA lost Vietnam War. Only powers, superpowers at that time, USA and USSR, had to withdraw from Afghanistan. And we see the situation of Afghanistan, what it is today. We can find many more examples like this. The fact remains that just economy and army size is bigger. That does not necessarily mean that mighty power will win. That is surely is an advantage that I concede, but not the only condition to win the war. Next slide, please. Let us compare the combat aircraft numbers of both the countries. As shown in the slide, China has about 1900 to 2000 combat aircraft of different types, and latest being J-20 and Su-35. J-20, as per their announcement earlier, was supposed to be the 5th generation fighter as compared to F-22 and F-35. But recently, about 6 months back, they have downgraded that announcement and they've said now that J-20 is a 4th generation fighter. But actually, as per other assessment, J-20 could be just 3.5 generation fighters. Against that, with India or Indian Air Force, we have around 600 fighters, and Rafale induction is the latest. Though the number of Rafale today is only 5, but that itself is a very big threat to China as such. Next slide, please. I'm of the opinion that here we have advantage in our combat or with air arsenal. In the first look, due to mismatch of the numbers, it may appear that we are at a great disadvantage. But the situation is different, as I would explain. The number of airfield the country has from where these aircraft can be launched. China has just 3 airfield for launching attacks in Ladakh area. Each airfield has limited capacity to accommodate number of aircraft. If you increase number of aircraft in the airfield, then there is a danger to lose the aircraft, more number of aircraft if attacked as such. Their airfield is at height. Higher the airfield, lower the load carrying capacity of the aircraft. At higher altitude, oxygen availability is less. Therefore, during takeoff and aircraft has to keep the load less. That is why all these aircraft will not be able to carry their usual weapon load and to its maximum capacity. And it is estimated that they'll be able to carry only half of the possible weapon load. That will reduce their capability to launch effective air attack. Against this, India has all their airfield in planes except maybe 2, Srinagar and in Avantipur and Ladakh or Leh. We have about 10 airfields from where our aircraft can be well sprayed and can be launched with full weapon load because at least 8 of them are in planes. Also, recently Operation Gagan Shakti, Indian Air Force displayed its capacity to launch about 11,000 sorties in 15 days. That is a huge number of operational sorties launched by any Air Force in recent time. Against this, China has no such demonstrated ability of launching this many number of sorties per day by Air Force. That itself is a big advantage to India. We are also war hardened. Indian Air Force has taken part in all 3 wars, including Kargil. Balakot strike is the latest, and defending air border of India from Pakistan attack is also a very recent phenomenon. So we are a well-greased machinery. Against this, and also we exercise very regularly with base of the air forces, like with US Air Force, French Air Force, UK Air Force, and Royal Air Force, and so on. Against this, China has not fought any war as such, and Air Force is not been utilized or tested in a way. China has no such advantage. Have been also doing exercises what based of the Air Forces, and they have been exercising only with the Russian Air Force and Pakistan Air Force, and now they have an opportunity to do exercise with Turkey Air Force. Our pilots are much better trained and are supposed to be the best in the world in air-to-air combat. That is because of the man behind the machine. We have a great advantage. Against this, PLAF, that is Chinese Air Force, is not accustomed to undertake such combat. To overcome this limitation, recently they have been practicing air combat with Pakistan Air Force. And ability of Pakistan, we all know. Next slide, please. When you talk about air arsenal, we have to talk about the missiles. In the same way, China has about 1,500 missiles of different type and different range. Out of these, about 1,200 are short and medium range. About 100 are IRBM and ICBM, and about 200 to 500 are cruise missiles. IRBM and ICBM are generally used for nuclear warhead. The load carrying capacity of these missiles is about 200 kg to 500 kg. But their accuracy is quite low compared to what Indian missile accuracy is. CEP, that is circular probability of error, that is a probability of missile hitting the target within the circle of what radius. Chinese missiles have this value as claimed by them to be around 10 to 30 meters. That is provided their Baidu GPS is not jammed. Else, CP value reduces or other increases to about 200 to 600 meters. And that I feel is very, very inaccurate. And I'm sure that Indian Air Force has got capability to take care of this. Against this missile arsenal, India is much more potent, more accurate, and with well sped in terms of capability, usage, and range. For example, BrahMos has CP of 5 meters. But I've seen the video of live trials where BrahMos released from Sukhoi 300 kilometers distance, hitting the pin right on the head. That is bullseye. That is the capability of our missiles. Even the small range version like Akash surface to air missile, multi-barrel Pinaka rocket system, which is very accurate and has capability to launch 12 rockets in 44 seconds. So you can see the firepower we have in rockets and missiles. Further, it is also pertinent to note following points. The first, China cannot deploy all their missiles for India since it has problem with countries in the South China Sea. That is on its eastern border. That side also needs to be secured adequately. Therefore, as per my estimate, China cannot deploy more than 25 to 30% of their missile power towards India. That is not more than 300 to 400 missiles. Since these missiles have load carrying capacity of not more than 500 kg, one missile can't destroy more than one blast pan, that is one aircraft. And it is estimated that in order to destroy a military airbase as such, one needs to launch about 60 to 70 such missiles, assuming that all the missiles hit their intended targets. And if not so, then this figure may go as high as 100 missiles. There is also a probability and chance that these missiles may hit civilian targets. Therefore, even the civilians in that area will have to be careful and will be required to be ready for taking such hit. This, if it happens, will test the resolve of Indian citizen as such and at large. But at the same time, I would also like to pinpoint that Hitler in the Second World War decided to hit London with hundreds and thousands of bombs after he had almost whole Europe captured and invaded. London residents faced this heavy damage and casualties, but the resolve of to fight multiplied, and rest is the history. Force multiplier like AWACS, reconnaissance aircraft, EW capability, area refueling, attack helicopters will also play a very big important role in this conflict. I am not getting into details of all this because it will take a lot of time to discuss all these aspects. Next slide, please. We have discussed the advantage Indian Air Force. In the same way, we also must discuss, though in very brief, advantage Indian Army, because it is very important to understand if we have the conflict, which side weighs higher. I think it is also important and very pertinent to note the Indian Army is the best in the world, very experienced and capable in mountain warfare. We have proved our capabilities in Siachen as well as in Kargil war. In Kargil, we prevailed even though we were at disadvantage because Pakistan had occupied the heights. In Siachen, we moved very fast and first and occupied the glacier and maintaining the advantage till date. In Ladakh, we did the same. Recently, we moved very swiftly and have occupied the heights. This has given us tremendous advantage, and China never expected this. And I would say that they were caught unaware. We have the established supply line, and that is not the case with China. Only challenge here is the number of troops has increased multi-float. That's about around 10 times to 10 to 12 times. Here I would like to point out one more aspect of Chinese, the way they are handling their occupation in mountain and preparedness to stay for long in winter. China has prepared pressurized higher oxygen availability barracks for Chinese troops. That is because the oxygen availability is less, and to stay there and maintain there, you need acclimatization by your troops. Now imagine if we attack this barracks, what happens? This particular Chinese troops will have to come out in open, and they will not be acclimatized. Will they be able to fight war in open without getting acclimatization? I don't think so. They will not be as effective. So overall, the way I look at it, Indian Army has definitely got advantage, and with the advantage of Indian Air Force, we have definitely much more advantage in coming in good color, coming out with the flying colors in this conflict, if at all it happens. Next slide. When you talk about the aspects of war, military aspects is one part, which we discuss quite in great detail. But there are other aspects of war, that's diplomacy, cyber attacks, information warfare through regular media and social media, support to local unrest and fault lines, and lastly, and not the least, economic warfare. Each of these again are the topics to discuss with a full about half an hour, 1 hour to get the total understanding. But I'm sure all of you know that China is applying all these aspects of the war against India in a very, very big way. But here, I would speak in short about economic warfare and the steps taken by India towards this. Banning Chinese application, restrict investment in India, cancelling government orders, and disallowing Chinese companies to take part in tenders, and announcing Atmanirbhar Yojana and taking various steps to restrict import of certain goods from China are the main steps in this direction. Even anti-China feeling among Indian citizens is quite prevalent in India, and many have decided to stop buying Chinese goods. Many companies have initiated steps to reduce use of Chinese parts in their products is a welcome step. Other countries have also followed Indian lead and started acting against Chinese economy. Next. With this, now I think we can discuss what lies ahead. India took strong and swift military action countering Chinese aggression. You may say that India was slow in reacting initially. Maybe yes, but here I would like to point out that initially the whole movement started with an exercise by China, and I'm sure Indian Army and the government must have been informed regarding that. That exercise, what we saw was armored artillery and missiles were used, but infantry was missing. And that exercise was used and accused to take this action of aggression in Ladakh, what China has done. That is why maybe the Indians were caught unaware, and initial action by India and their reaction you may have found rather slow. So I agree, maybe yes, but then India stood up very, very strongly. Fight on 15th May, where our 20 soldiers were killed, but China also lost more than 43 soldiers, up to 100 as the various estimates suggest. That not only unnerved China, but India got praise from all over the world. The deployment of forces, matching Chinese presence, and activating Indian Air Force in that sector made China to rethink about their future action. Indian Air Force operated all type of fighters and attack helicopters, including Su-30, Rafale, Apache helicopter, and so on. Some of the advanced landing strips are also activated. Hercules aircraft, the Giant, is pressed in operation to and from Leh. The latest is that Indian Army occupied all heights south of Pangong Tso Lake as a preemptive move. And from here, movement of Chinese troops are easily monitored and could be controlled if required. All the military and diplomatic dialogues have not been able to defuse situation and move the troops back into the barracks. It appears that both sides are there to stay through the upcoming winters, and that is going to be difficult time for both the sides. But more so for Chinese troops because they are not accustomed with such harsh environment. In South China Sea, US has moved in with 2 aircraft carriers and full fighting capabilities, including B-52 bombers. US Navy with other countries, including India, have carried out exercises very near to shoreline of China. Simultaneously, India took the lead in putting economical sanction, as we discussed, in some form, and that is followed by other countries. All these have created doubt in mind of China. Now they have reached the position where they may be wanting to have some withdrawal solution without getting any hit to their prestige internationally and more so domestically. In the absence of it, Xi Jinping may lose some control of the CCP, and that could be the main worry for him. Then what is the solution? Do we really see the solution? Very frankly, I see no solution in sight. As such, because we will not go unless China withdraws their troops. We will not let go unless they withdraw. Withdraw where? To their original position, what was there before April 2020. This will not be acceptable to China because then they will lose their face. I am of the opinion that China is waiting for US election to complete and hoping for Biden to win. Because in all the probability, USA under Biden will be soft to China and may not intervene militarily in case military action is initiated. That is why, as per various reports, China is helping Biden in many ways by manipulating social media and other ways as such. If Biden wins, the push by military may be initiated by China. Else, the stalemate may be a bit longer. As far as India is concerned, whatever may be the result of US election, India has to fight its own battle. Therefore, India must find an opportune time to initiate military push if the diplomatic solution is not found. And at the time of its choice, winter may not be a wrong time for such push based on the assessment of what I've discussed with you today. Earlier, either way, unless China withdraws unilaterally, I don't see any solution. Of course, politics is art of impossibility. Anything can happen. But let us hope that India comes out with flying colors at the end of this. Next slide, please. In the conclusion at the end, I would say that the current situation will get resolved with or without military conflict. Conflict, if happens, is likely to be most probably be limited. But we need to understand and learn from what India has gone through till date. Till date, we have been very reluctant to use our military power and position. We were bending backwards to satisfy others. We agreed to partition of countries to satisfy certain people. We gave up UN Security Council seat in favor of China. We handed over 93,000 soldiers and land we won and occupied in 65 and 1941 war. We did not retaliate after parliament attack on Mumbai. We gave access to our market to foreign countries without getting similar access and advantage for our economy and the companies. The list is very, very long. But look at where it has brought us. We were reluctant to use our commercial, economic, and military power and flex our muscles. External Affairs Ministry, Commercial Ministry, and Defense Ministries working without any common direction and coherent policy. Also, to build strong military is a very costly affair and needs a large amount of funding. More so, if we don't have domestic defense industry R&D capability to meet our defense requirements. But to allot that large amount of fund, ignoring other developmental need of the country is very, very difficult. Therefore, to build strong military, stronger economy is required. But to have a strong economy, strong military is required. So that no one dares to try to violate our national integrity and geographical border. But now, India has changed track. India now has learned to use hard military power where and when required. Today, commercial and economical interest of the country is kept in front line while taking any decision. India has left Nehruvian concept behind and started walking on the road and direction shown by Chanakya. I would like to end this with what Chanakya said. He gave 6 mantras for foreign policy for any state. The second being eliminate the enemy. Enemy should not be dealt with kid gloves, but the blow should be so strong that either way they mend their ways and leave animosity with us, or we eliminate the enemy altogether. I'm happy that India has finally decided to follow this to some extent. Next slide. Thank you very much. Jai Hind and God bless. I'm ready to answer your questions. I shall try to answer to best of my ability. And if I'm unable to answer any one of your questions, I will revert back. That I promise. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Lalit. Thank you. Mr. Lalit.
Thank you, Wing Commander Jaidev Desai ji. It was a quite enlightening talk. I would encourage the audience to raise their questions. But before the audience raise their questions, I have my questions to read for you. So the question is, we have read in the news reports that Rafale, the latest fighter jet that we have procured from France, from the same Dassault company, you built the Mirage 2000 repair line. So it is said that its speed is slower than the Chinese J-20. So if our Rafale's speed is slower, how effective you find it in responding to a probable attack using J-20 by the Chinese Air Force? That is first question I had. It was in my mind since the beginning. Thank you, sir, for allowing me to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Lalit, and thank you for a question. This question also is there in many mind of many of the people who are not involved with the military aviation as such. You see, the maximum speed of an aircraft actually is not used in the air combat at all. It is just a number basically publicized with respect to the power of the engine and the aircraft and what maximum speed it can achieve. It's just a number as far as I'm concerned. In air combat, there are few more factors, or other than this, other factors get involved much more. Number one, rate of radius. Actually, in air combat, the rate of radius, the radius radius of the ton is more important. Slower speed capability of you to maneuver the aircraft gets important, because then you can go behind the aircraft. Your armament range capabilities, your radar, how many targets you can track at a time, and you can launch at a time. So all these factors get involved, becomes much more important in any air combat, and that gives the result of the air attack as such. So I would say that the air speed, maximum air speed about 2 Mach is quite sufficient, and power of the engine, avionics, uh, beyond the visual range missiles capabilities, and other avionics and other capabilities of aircraft is much more important than this particular speed. And in that aspect, as I already said, Rafale is supposed to be 4.5 fifth generation, whereas J-20 is not like to be even the fourth generation. So that way we have advantage all over. And also we have Su-30 and other aircraft and other battery of missiles and all other capabilities. So overall, I think we have much more and better advantage, and we are at much more better advantage to take care of the Chinese challenge. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question.
Yes, sir. You explained it very nicely. Answer given, removes the mist on this airspeed aspect of the what the fighter gets. Another question which I was having in my mind, maybe the audience is also going to raise their questions. That is, after the COVID, SARS-CoV-2 virus pandemic, uh, uh, world's economy is getting ruined, but China is free from that economy. So, what do you think? Using its economic power, will China be able to influence the further the European countries, those who are still in wait and watch situation? How you look at it, sir?
Yes, of course. I mean, another, I think, the very good question. But before I ask a question, I think I would give you one example to prove my point about which I gave you for the previous question about speed and all. You see, F-16 speed is supposed to be higher than MiG-21 speed, but still MiG-21 killed F-16 during Balakot after Balakot strike. I think that also proves the point what I said earlier. As far as this economical condition of countries, including India and USA and other Western countries concerned, yes, we are supposed to be shrinking. We have economic problem. Each country is trying its level best to resolve this economic problem. And hopefully, another about 6 to 9 months, all countries should be able to come out. When vaccine comes out, I'm sure the rate of coming out of this economical shrinking will be much faster. So maybe another year or so, we could go back to the earlier economical condition of each of the country. But because of the fact that China is a communist country, and they faced this problem much earlier, and their as such economy was much bigger, they do not have this problem as such, and they are likely to use this cash or available money for taking over the companies and which are available right now at a reduced valuation, and that is where the fear is. Actually, if you talk about the European countries, all the countries have this problem, and they have started realizing that you cannot have the same business with China as it was pre-COVID, but they have their own limitations also. Like say, take example of Germany. I believe way back in 2008, a secret paper was published in Germany for bad impact of Chinese commercial and companies and products on Germany, especially in political and other advantage what they are gaining out of it. Many of these political people in Germany itself are not willing to go along in the same way with China now. But Merkel somehow is not coming in that much open against China, mainly because of the pressure of their company like Volkswagen and all. They have a very big stake in China, and that is playing a big weight in her mind. And I'm sure similarly, 5G 5G rollout in Germany, Huawei has got a big stake, and to replace Huawei is going to be a very big task. And if they do that, 5G rollout in Germany will get very badly. Same problem or same questions are there in mind of always European country, because they have gone a very big way into China. Unlike that, In Canada and USA, things are different, and they have slightly. US, of course, has come out under Trump in a very big way. Canada has come out against Hawaii. Australia also has come out in open, but somehow because of this reason, uh, Europe, European countries have not come out in that much open. And I personally feel that commercial reasons are much more weighing in their mind before they take very strong stand against China. Thank you.
Okay. All right, sir. Again, the answer is very enlightening and addresses to the queries that we have, the curiosity. One final from my side, from the foundation side, would be we have seen among this all conflict and the aggression scenario, we have seen we have not took the Tibetan issue in China. We have not even used the Tibetan issue as another means of responding to Chinese aggression. Chinese Tibetans are waiting for their home back. Their home Chinese are waiting for their move back to home in Tibet. Nothing is happening. Earlier, there were some activities happening in the Western Europe, particularly in Britain, France, and Germany. They were active for their human rights and all. But after I think since 2010 onwards, after this decade, first half of this decade, Europe has gone into mute with respect to the human rights of the Tibetans and any development with regard to that. So, how you look at it? Why even India also did not use Tibetans and did not wreck up the issue to deal with the China?
I think this Tibet and Taiwan also is a similar issue. I personally feel that earlier we were following the one China policy. And that is what China insisted all the countries to follow the policy and wanted all the countries to accept Tibet as their territory, Taiwan as their territory, and so on. India, because of, we already discussed earlier, because of soft policy and all, we followed this, and we have not taken or spoken anything against this. But now, because of this, what has happened now in last about a year after COVID and all, I think the situation has changed all over the world. I'll keep Europe as aside because of what we have already discussed, and I will add 1 or 2 points later. As far as India is concerned, Tibet policy was questionable right from the beginning. Actually, if you see, if the Tibet was not handed over to China, China and India actually had no common boundary. But because of the earlier policy and all, and to satisfy them and hope that if they are satisfied, we will not have problem. That type of policy what India followed, and that is where we are today. Until date, I don't see much of the statement coming out from government side against Tibet, Taiwan, and all. But last about 6 months, 1 year, I see a lot of movement in the government also, and lot of voices being generated in social media in general from Indian voices. Yesterday, if you remember, was a Taiwan National Day, and there were posters come out in front of Chinese embassy in favor of Taiwan. And Taiwan had earlier, before 3 days, had issued a statement asking all the media not to popularize and celebrate Taiwan Day. And still this happened, and social media did celebrate Taiwan Day in some way. As far as Taiwan is concerned, also about a 6 month back, India did send some people to represent India in Taiwan, and has invited Taiwan people to come and come to India in a very big way. So policy is changing, but right, what you say is right. Tibet, Taiwan, Hong Kong. Generally, I find the government of India remaining silent. But I hope that with this experience, government India will change its policy, and government India need to change the policy. As far as Europe is concerned, what you say is very right. Somehow, European countries, because of their dependence on China on trade and commerce, and bad experience from USA in last about few years, say about a decade or so, as also I mentioned in my talk. They try to go more close to China commercially and trade-wise, and they invited China into their country and encouraged their companies to uh, install the shops in China. But for this, they have maintained very big silence against infringement of IPR, human right violation, what is happening to Muslim and Tibet and everywhere else. You don't find voices in Europe. Other reason, the way I look at it is, in Europe as such, in many countries, Islamic influence is increasing, and leftist influence in these countries is increasing. That also is making European country not to speak against all this as such, against China, their Muslim policy, their leftist policy, and so on. And I feel USA, if Trump comes back, will be much more vocal. Australia is becoming vocal. Japan is becoming vocal. India is trying to become vocal. Hope they become much more vocal than what it is today. And all this will encourage Europe also to fall in line with all of us and start talking, or if not taking part in any initiative and military action as such, but at least taking some preemptive move to protect themselves from the China onslaught. I hope they do that. Thank you very much.
Questions from the audience? I don't know. Have any received any question from the audience side in the YouTube chat box?
Yes, sir. There are some questions. First question is from. Hello. Sir, first
Yes,
question
Yeah,
is
please carry on.
which are the 5 policies of Chanakya? You mentioned one. It is the question from Padmani Valram.
So
yeah,
Chanakya,
Padmi,
we are not going to discuss, I think.
yeah, but I will send her the through email to you, Mr. Lalit, all these policies and all. Actually, Earth Shastra must be read, and I can send it to you, and you can pass on this information to her.
Uh, the question is from audience. Rajesh Europe. I read some yesterday on NDTV news that I thoroughly don't trust, having written that China has deployed 60,000 soldiers across Indian borders. What should be our response?
You see, first of all, let me be very, very clear and say very upright. There are few channels report what we see even at that time. Depend like a lot of land has been taken over by China and all those things are very inaccurate and should not be relied upon. A 50,000 figure is very, very inaccurate, very highly exaggerated figure. It is likely to be around 15 to 20, 25,000 soldiers in flight. And we also have about equal number of soldiers on our border. Heavy artillery and tank and other armored vehicles also are moved in that. And the whole border is basically activated by us. And we have deployed almost the same number of troops and equipment, similar troops and equipment to counter the threat, if at all we need to face. Moreover, our advantage is, as we discussed, that we have also an Air Force arsenal in a much, much bigger way. And we activated that in a very, very fast. And that has given the edge and confidence to us that we will be able to handle the Chinese threat as such. Again, to all the viewers, I personally feel, please do not believe our channel. Please have both sides of view. Do not, Chinese propaganda is very, very big. They've unleashed the propaganda in India to make Indian in favor of them and believe that we cannot handle Chinese aggression or Chinese might. And many of the media, I'm sorry to say, I will not name them, Many of the journalists are on their payroll. One journalist, I forget his name, is already arrested for doing this. Many more may take place in near future. So I must say that just don't have a belief in by one TV channel or print media or so. Have open view. Social media is available. There are both type of views are available. Listen to the experts' videos available in on YouTube and make your own judgment. Thank you.
Sir, another question from Anil Agarwal. What might be a good source of authentic information? Clearly, one cannot rely on social media or the TV channels.
In a lighter word, please contact me. But in a serious note, basically, you see, there are many experts, many experts do voice their views in media, YouTube media. I don't want to be their advertising face for them. But when you see these various moves, like example, Lieutenant General Hattani, Major General Bakshi, I mean, there are many such experts are available. Videos are available uh, in social media. Please do listen to them. They also, like what I try to analyze, they analyze the picture in a very big way, in a very scientific way, and with data and all. They have the talk with the chief of air staff, chief of army staff, uh, various vice chief and all. Please do listen to all that and make your own opinion, judgment and opinion. That's what I would say. And if not all, please contact me. You can take my email ID, phone number, Skype ID from Mr. Lalit.
Question is from Anubhuti Patil. The One Valley, a route to China, and India reinstated its trade with roads as it was in ancient times.
No, we are not very clear. Can you just repeat the question, please? Your voice was breaking. Hello. Your voice was breaking. Can you repeat the question, please?
Aman, your question was not audible. Can you please repeat your question? Okay, the question, sir.
Yes.
It is Mr. Miss Anubhuti Patil. She is asking, keeping Galwan Valley, Nelang Valley a route to China, can India reinstate it with the Kasgar province as it was in the ancient times?
You see, lot of ifs and buts have taken from the ancient time. And as I told you, the China also has changed their political boundary in many ways. As far as we are concerned, I should say very clearly, and as the stated policy of the government, that we do not want to take over anybody's boundary. Whatever boundary we had in 1947, we don't want to expand that. But at the same time, we want to ensure that our boundary is not, or our land is not taken over by anybody else. More than about 50,000 square kilometer of the area is taken over by China in Aksai Chin area, and also some area is donated or gifted by Pakistan from the POK as such. Pakistan, POK, and POJNK, I would say, Pakistan and Gilgit were supposed to be part of us, but they also have not in among us. So what right now we should talk about is to basically reinstate the boundary what we had in 1947. That should be our first choice, rather than going in an ancient way. Because when you go to ancient India, then even Afghanistan, part of Afghanistan was part of India. Myanmar and all the whole thing was part of India. Bharat Varsh, what we call. Now, do we want to go that way? I don't think so. I don't think that will be a practical approach right now. So let us try to restrict ourselves to boundary what we had in 1947 and try to regain. And that is what the Indian Parliament, including present Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah, also stated the same thing, that we want to take back POK, we want to take back Aksai Chin, but how, when, and these are the only question. As far as Galwan Valley is concerned, that DBO, that road link, what we have made, this particular aggression, which has been foiled by Indian Army and Indian forces, and not allowing China to take over a few of the important points in Galwan Valley, and thus stopping them or having our post to overlook that they are not able to join uh, the CPAC from Siachen side. Because if that happens, the southern China also gets connected to that. Right now, that is not connected to CPAC, and that is the advantage they want to have. And that aim, political aim, military aim, what they had, we have foiled. And I think that is where it should stay right now, rather than going back in the history of many, many years ago. Thank you very much.
Any more questions from the audience side? Aman, are you there? Any question?
Yes, sir. One last question is from Padmani Balram. Is that our policies of equality and democracy is keeping us behind in war strategies? What are the reasons?
First of all, I must make one observation here. I find more questions from the girls and female gender rather than male, and that is what I like about it. The girl power, woman power is being shown in this particular place, and I'm very happy to say that. But the way I look at it, democracy has definitely certain disadvantage, but it has got so many advantages that democracy definitely, as far as I'm concerned, is much better than communism and authoritarian. The main disadvantage of democracy is that you have to keep everybody happy, and that is why many steps which government or present dispensation would like to take may not be able to take, and that decision making process you may find that is being slowed down. Second, as a democracy, we need to take care of the whole population, right from the bottommost of the pyramid to the topmost of the pyramid. And our resources have to be distributed accordingly. So though you want to invest more on military and that type of things, but you may not be able to do so. Unfortunately, in India, I personally feel that two main things kept us behind. Number one, our policy, Nehruvian policy, that is try to satisfy the opposition and hope that he will not demand more. That we have suffered in 1947, we got partition, and today what we are seeing is basically the same thing, appeasement policy of politicians, which must be stopped. And now change is taking place. And the second thing what we have is that government, no government in last about 20-25 years had a single party majority. So coalition. And each coalition partner had their own requirement to satisfy their own political capital. And therefore, the generally more importantly required investment could not be made. More importantly, decisions required to be made in favor of the country could not be made. Lot of places, I would rather say sovereignty and requirement of the country was compromised. Congress party, I don't want to get into political right now, but I can't stop by saying Congress party signing personal or private accord with China is generally not heard. And that accord was what? Agreement what? Not in public domain. So there are many things that happen because of which we are today what we are. We need to go in back to find out why we are like this. But instead of dwelling the past, now let us look at the future. Let us change our ways. Let us mend our ways. Let us take correct decision. Let us take best foot forward. Let us take right decision and put investment in the right way. Let us make our country Atmanirbhar and so on. Let us, and it is not only the decision of the government. We as an Indian, we as a citizen, we also have a role to play. I'll just take an example. Nothing to boast about, but I have got a grandson of 7 years. And today, when he downloads the application on tab or mobile, he first sees whether his application is Chinese or not. If the application is Chinese, he does not download that application. So, are we up to this requirement of the day? And we must. We must do our duty and should not leave everything to the government. Our duty does not stop by just giving a vote to a party and then we expect that party or that particular chap to do. We need to do our best. We need to do our duty, and then only we can be what we deserve to be a superpower militarily and economically. We can't have economical superpower. We cannot be economical superpower unless we are military superpower, and we can't be military superpower unless we are economic superpower. This is like chicken and egg. What comes first? But both have to be grown together, and our effort, our part in this will play a major role. That is what I think. Thank you very much.
More questions from the audience?
Uh,
Okay, so I would ask one question. A question is tricky to answer, but anyway, I'm not able to resist my temptation to ask question to Honorable Speaker, Wing Commander Sir. So the question is, our current Minister of External Affairs, Jaishankar ji, has been the longest serving ambassador in China from India. And then after that, he served in America also, in the same capacity. And it was during his tenure the economy was opened in a big way for the Chinese investment. Rather, he played earlier setting up a $4,000 million energy plant in Gujarat. But I'm forgetting its name. Chinese company TVA Energy. $400 million investment directly happened to Gujarat. And as a result of this policy, open China, open economy policy, the in Chinese goods were dumped into India. This happened in his first tenure. Then later on, we see him talking. Let the realism shape the India China economic policies, etc. So, that is the first part of question. And the second part of question is, I would correlate both. We see China is investing a lot in the Pakistan as well as now in the Iran. So with these two, India opening its border, economic border to China in the first half of the decade, and Mr. Jaishankar playing a key role in part of the decade. And now later on speaking the realism. So how you think this trend which India has picked up lately will continue with the same momentum, or India will try with Atmanirbhar and so many things is try to establish its dominance in the economic forefront in the South Asia or maybe the Africa. We have done some initiatives for the Africa to build our economic dominance or economic empire, but no consistent effort being done by the government of India, despite some initiatives. This is what I personally feel. So, how a person can change in such a short period from stance 1 to stance 2? That is one question for you. And secondly, how we can disorient Pakistan coming closer to China, because it is very important in our interest to disorient Pakistan from the China or even the Iran. This should not be encircled by Chinese troops, Chinese interests in all the side of the borders. So these two questions I would request to answer in the interest of our audience, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Lalit. This is not a tricky question, but a question which will encompass the whole geographical and economical condition of in the globe as such. So it is a very long, and we can have a very big discussion on this. But keeping that apart, let's talk about President External Minister, like what you say, that he was ambassador in China when this happened. Let's not forget what is the role of an ambassador. Role of ambassador to implement the government policy. So whatever the policy of the government of the day is there, his dictum is to implement that policy and further the policy of the government of the day. At that time, as I already mentioned in my talk also, the government gave unhindered access to Chinese goods and Chinese companies in India. That actually started about 2005, 2006 onwards, much more in a big way. And that is why last 10 years, when you see that our trade imbalance has multiplied about 40 times, and now we are where we are. But after this particular government has come, the shift in policy took place. So when he was Secretary of Foreign Affairs, or whatever position he was holding, and now holding the position of Foreign Minister, he will have to implement the policy of the present dispensation. That policy is different. Like the policy is not look at China alone, but look East policy. So China is one, all right, but because of this, but at the same time, keeping in interest of India first is the prime mantra of present government. And that is why, as I mentioned in my talk also, we have come out of RCEP because we felt that our economy and our companies will suffer in case of this. As far as Iraq, let's talk about Pakistan now. Actually, Pakistan started becoming close to China right from 1963. Before 1962, actually, Pakistan was not with China. But after that, China became close to Pakistan. And the land which I'm saying that handed over or gifted to Pakistan happened in 1963. And then after, they have remained friends. Pakistan thereafter became friend to USA during Afghanistan war and things like that. USA used Pakistan. But last, if you look at it, Pakistan has, US has withdrawn from Pakistan and come more close to India. As far as China was concerned, China wanted the access to the sea on this part of the world. They have the business, or most of their cargo come from the eastern China through Malacca Strait and then to the Europe and Africa and things like that. But the Malacca Strait is like a chicken neck for them. They can be, in case of any military problem, military aggression, military conflict, they can be a very big disadvantage at that area. So they wanted another access, and Pakistan was the place through that they could have gone, and that is why CPEC was formed. And lot of through BRI, lot of loan was given to Pakistan. And after USA left Pakistan, now Pakistan has come in the clutches of China. So there's a fact of it. It suits China also, because now Pakistan is not there. They need money. They need big support to the world. China should, and Pakistan now, the common enemy is India. And like, for example, 65 and 71 war, Pakistan wanted China to take part. And let me also say that 71, even USA requested China to attack India from the northeast sector, but China did not do so at that time. But today the things is different. The whole geopolitical scenario has changed. The whole world has changed. As far as Iran is concerned, we wanted, and we have a lot of investment in Afghanistan, and we also wanted to have Jawhar port investment of ours is quite well known. But after Iran treaty was broken by USA, China saw a very opportune moment to take Iran in that foothold. China has assured about $40 billion investment in there, and they are building a lot of infrastructure in Iraq and helping them out. There was a once upon a time a talk whether Jawhar port of investment will go waste or not, will be able to operate Jawhar port or not. But I think that all that fear has been gone now. We will be able to operate. That is what I personally feel. Turkey is another point where Turkey has gone out of the NATO hold, and now Turkey has become a Muslim country, and they are trying to dislodge Saudi Arabia as a Muslim caliphate, and they are trying to create their own Muslim uh, uh, position, making the Muslim position strong. The thing. So Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, China, and Malaysia, they are becoming one axis, and of course, North Korea cannot be forgotten. So the whole game is like a chessboard, and each country, based on their influence and capability, is playing in this game. And let us see who will prevail at the end. Actually, every country is looking for its own pie, including India, and nothing wrong in it. So I hope that India gets a pie what it deserves and what it wants. That is what we should look in at the end of the day. As far as India, I mean China and Pakistan are concerned, yes. So finally, whenever war happens, even we want to take back the POK and all, we have to be ready for a two-front war. And for that, our armed forces will have to be strengthened. Indian Air Force born about 42 squadron strength. If today we are about 32, and if no quick actions taken, we are likely to come down to 25. But if we want to have full-fledged two-front war, then at least about 37, 38, 39 squadrons will require. A lot of other naval vessels, army, whole thing, Jingbank will have to be upgraded. And I hope government will do the needful with Atmanirbharta in making Indian defense and what the step taken by the government, we will be able to achieve it. And then we will be able to take back our lost land in near future and also get our pie and become superpower. We are regional power, definitely we are, but we improve our economy, improve our military aid, and be where what we deserve and where we want to be. I know I may not have answered many things in your, as I said, that each country, relationship, each country, their influence in China, USA, us, and all is like a chess game. It's a long discussion, and I don't think it's the right time to have such a long discussion. In short, whatever I could do, I've tried to answer your question. If I've not satisfied you, I'm sorry. Hello.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I would like to request Vaishali ma'am to please come forward and move the program.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Indology Foundation, to giving me this opportunity. My name is Vaishali Nimbalkar Saman. We are very grateful and fortunate that Honorable Veteran Wing Commander of Indian Air Force, Shri Jaydev Desai sir, is among us. Nowadays, we all are aware of China's aggression and the activities going on in Galwan Valley. We are now aware of what is the new age of conflicts. Very thank you, sir, to illuminate the facts of conflict with China. Sir enlightened us about China's policy and Indian policy of war and why we lost 1962 war. 1967 war is important to our moral. The war between Nathula and Chola's clashes. Indian trade policy with China gave free hand to dump cheap goods in India. Long 60 years policies are changing now, like enhancing internal security by taking proactive counter actions, surgical strikes, Myanmar and Balakot. China was unhappy with India for her actions like abrogation of Article 370 and making Ladakh a union territory. Emergence of India is power. Emergence of India as power in regional area are the reason of China's these days actions. The example of Lord Rama, Pandava, British and Vietnam, how they won war in spite of low power is important. I want One more example to mention. One example of Queen Tulsabai Nimbarkar, Mir Ahmad Khan, quite have won that war. Mughal Sardar Mir Ahmad Khan died in that war in 1710. These are the examples in India, definitely. We have good aircrafts, number of airfields. China about 3 and India about 10 is the plus point of our country. How weapon load is less in higher altitude decrease the capacity and capability to launch number of operations. Sir throws light on points to be considered on missiles. How many missiles can be pointed towards India? India is capable to deal with China's missiles. India's BrahMos, Akash, Pinok are precise and accuracy rate is very high. When China's missiles are short and medium and 200 to 500 cruise missiles. Indian Army is best in world in mountain war. We are very proud to Indian Army. Indian Army has much more advantage as China is not capable to war in open in harsh winters, though they are preparing hard. Against China, India stood very strongly. India has got praise from all over the world. India took a lead about economic policy. China and world is following us. China is hoping and waiting to Biden to win USA and so backing him. Still, India has to fight his own battle. Let us hope India would come out with flying colors. India is now started working on Chanakya's Niti. Not to believe on China's propaganda is important. Thank you, sir, for your opinion and insight on China's policy on war. The session enlightened us. Thanks to answering questions precisely. I am thankful to audience gathered here. Thanks to hear me patiently. Thanks to our Indology Foundation team. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And before we call it a close, sir, I am happy to let you know one thing. 194 people among the audience have replayed the complete talk. They replayed from the beginning. 194 people among the audience. So that is a
Sir,
success,
it's crossed
and the
200
message
now,
has
sir.
been taken. 200 now. So they are revisiting from the beginning to the last, to the end. That is what the interest you have generated among the audience. Thank you, sir, and we look forward to have more talks from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lalit, for giving the opportunity, and I'm very encouraged by this number. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Vaishali, and thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I'm signing out now. I'm signing out.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Audience, I have posted the feedback link in chat box. Please fill that feedback link. It will be expired within 15 minutes.
आकर्षण मत कर बढ़िया
Aman, should end this session now?
Sure. Sending
So,
from here.
we will announce the Navratri session.
Please, Anna. Yes. Okay. Let's confirm on that. So, dear audience, is Vaishali ji reminded it was escaping from my mind that I'm happy to announce that from the Navaratris, which is starting on the 17th of October this month, so we are starting only women, or in other words, the all women conferences, the world class talks from 17th onwards. So please stay with us, join the same video channel. And through this video only, this channel only, you will be having you were having the opportunity to watch us. Very interesting and insightful talks from only the women scholars of India. And also, I would request to please come to us with your entries. With your, if you want to make a talk, if you want to make a presentation, we encourage the presentation-led talks only. We do not encourage the talks as a speaker normally speaks in conferences, the physical conferences. So we would be welcoming a good paper or good presentation-led talks from your side. We are open. So please hurry up and keep watching us through the same channel, YouTube channel. So thank you. That was the announcement from our side. And also we are hosting one Sanskrit Kavi Sammelan on the 25th of the October this month. We are on the day of Vijayadashmi. So from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. It will be a 2-hour session exclusively dedicated to Sanskrit poetry, and the Sanskrit poets will be translating their poetry or whatever the creativity they bring to for us in Hindi as well as in English. So it is going to be multilingual. Rendering of the creativity or the poetry would be in Sanskrit, but they would also be reading the translation in Hindi and English. So that is going to be a very exciting program for all of us. Attempt was to make the Sanskrit relevant to the need of the day. See, Kalidasa expressed the his ideas of the day, but we should not remain limited only to the Kalidasa's expressions. The Sanskrit needs to be made modern, and that is the attempt we are doing at Indology Foundation with respect to promotion of the Sanskrit, the mother of all Indian languages. So thank you. If you want to add something, please add Vaishaliji, and then we will end up.
No, sir, nothing. Just we want entries from all over Europe and USA and Singapore and India. We are waiting for that. On Navratri speeches.
Yeah, thank you. That's a wish that we hope to have more entries from the all the subcontinents.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you and welcome to all.